You know, when you sent over the stuff about Elisa Lam,
Mm.
the Cecil Hotel itself kind of jumped out at me.
Yeah.
It's like, it's almost like a character, right? This really creepy presence hanging over the whole thing.
Well, the thing is, the Cecil's history, it's almost like it foreshadowed what happened. It's not just, the
Right?
spooky vibes.
Yeah.
You're talking about unsolved murders,
Yeah.
suicides,
Yeah.
even a serial killer lived there.
Yeah. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker, he was actually living there while he
Dress-
was, on his killing spree. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, really. I mean, were there any other events, that kind of echo Elisa's case, like anything on the roof or, God forbid, anything with the water tanks?
Well, there's no record of anybody else ending up in a water tank.
Mhm.
But the Cecil's past, it is full of deaths that left people wondering. Some were suicides, others, they just never figured out.
Yeah.
So when Elisa, a 21-year-old Canadian student, vanishes inside that hotel, it's almost as if the Cecil itself becomes a suspect.
And then there's that elevator footage. The last time anyone saw Lisa alive, it's not just creepy, it's genuinely unsettling.
Yeah.
It's like watching a puzzle, but it's happening in real time.
I think what makes that footage so captivating is that it's just open to so many interpretations.
Right.
I mean, you can't deny that Alyssa's behavior is strange. But is she hiding from someone? Is this her bipolar disorder, her mental health struggles?
Yeah.
Or is there something else, something more sinister going on?
Well, and we know that Elisa did struggle with bipolar disorder and depression, and she seemed to use social media a lot as a way to kind of connect with people and find support. And this trip to the West Coast, it was supposed to be a journey for her,
Yeah.
a chance to explore and find some peace. But how could her mental health, how could that possibly lead her to that water tank?
That is the big question, isn't it? We have to understand how bipolar disorder, especially during a manic or psychotic episode, how it can make someone act like what we see in the elevator. Could her movements, the button pushing, the hiding, could that all be linked to anxiety, paranoia, maybe even hallucinations?
Okay, so let's just say for a minute that Elisa's actions, that they were driven by a mental health episode. How does she even get to the roof? I mean, what you've said, getting up to the roof wasn't exactly a simple thing.
Okay.
Locked doors, alarms, security measures. It's not like it was easy to just wander up there.
Yeah, no. And that is one of the things that makes this case so strange. There are a few possibilities. The fire escape, believe it or not, wasn't alarmed back then. I mean, can you imagine?
Wow.
In a hotel with that kind of history?
And I was reading about some pretty serious security issues at the Cecil, locks that didn't work right, easy access to places that should have been restricted. It makes you wonder if maybe negligence played a part in this whole thing. If security had been tighter, could this whole tragedy have been prevented?
It's a question that just hangs over this entire case.
Yeah.
Could Elisa still be alive if the Cecil had taken security more seriously?
Yeah.
It's a disturbing thought.
All right, let's shift gears a bit and talk about the police investigation. So we know Elisa was reported missing on January 31st, 2013, when she didn't check out. What did the initial search involve? Did they find anything in the Cecil itself?
It's surprising, but the initial search of the Cecil, it didn't turn up much of anything. No signs of forced entry, no struggle, nothing that pointed to foul play. And even with Elisa's parents coming in from Canada to help, it just went cold.
And that's when the police decided to release the elevator footage, right?
Yeah.
Hoping for a break in the case. But instead of answers, it seems like it just made all the speculation worse.
Yeah, the footage, it really caught the public's imagination, but it also led to a ton of theories, some of them heading straight into paranormal territory, especially with the Cecil's reputation.
Of course.
It's almost like the hotel's past overshadowed the need for a solid investigation.
Then we have that awful discovery on February 19th. Maintenance workers were checking out complaints about water pressure and a weird taste, and they found Elisa's body in one of the rooftop water tanks. It's an image that stuck with me. I can't imagine what those workers went through.
It is chilling, isn't it? The image of Elisa, naked, her clothes floating there in that tank, it's hard to forget. And what makes it even weirder is that there were no signs of any injuries. So at first, they ruled out violence. So how did she get inside? That's the big question.
The lids to those tanks, those were heavy, right?
Yeah.
Hard to open. Could someone in Elisa's state, maybe having a mental health episode, could they have managed that alone? Or do we have to think about other things, like the lid being open already, maybe for maintenance, or something even worse?
That's the heart of this mystery, isn't it?
Yeah.
The water tank access, it's a whole other puzzle on top of everything else. We have to look at every possibility, from the realistic to the seemingly impossible. Could the hotel staff have been negligent somehow? Was there an unlocked way to get up there? Or is there an explanation that we haven't even considered?
And then there's the autopsy report. It officially said accidental drowning with bipolar disorder playing a part, but it doesn't really answer everything, does it?
You're right, the autopsy suggests it was an accident, but there are these weird things that don't quite fit. For example, the toxicology report showed that Elisa's medication levels weren't consistent, which means she might not have been taking her meds as prescribed. That makes you wonder about her mental state in those last few days.
So we've got a young woman struggling with bipolar disorder, a hotel with a dark history, and a death that just doesn't make sense. It's like a recipe for endless questions.
And we're just getting started. We haven't even touched on those strange things in the elevator footage, the possibility of foul play, and all the ethical stuff around internet sleuths. This deep dive has a long way to go. You know, when you mentioned the autopsy report, those inconsistencies, that's one of the things that really sets this case apart from like a regular drowning. Some forensic experts even say that the official findings are wrong and point to details that don't add up.
Okay, wait, now this is getting interesting. What kind of details? What makes them question the drowning part?
Well, the fact that Elisa's lungs didn't have much water in them is a big problem.
Huh.
Usually in drownings, you'd find a lot of water in the lungs, but with Elisa, there was barely any. So some experts think she might have already been dead before she ended up in the tank.
Whoa, okay. So if she didn't drown, what happened? Are we talking foul play here? Did someone kill her and make it look like an accident?
It's possible, but we got to be careful not to jump to conclusions.
Right.
We only have so much information, and just because some evidence is missing doesn't mean it was murder.
Sure.
It just means we have to consider all the possibilities.
Right, I get that. But what about those weird things with the elevator footage? You know, the timestamps being off, the blurred parts. Some people think someone messed with that footage.
Yeah.
Maybe to hide evidence or protect someone. Is there anything to that?
Those anomalies are strange. Like, why would timestamps be missing, or why would parts be blurry? Was it just a technical glitch, or did someone do it on purpose? But nobody official has explained it, so everyone keeps speculating.
Okay, but let's say, just for argument's sake, that the footage was messed with. What would they even be trying to hide? What could be so bad that they'd go through all that trouble?
Well, that's the question, isn't it? If we say someone did tamper with it, then we got to ask who would gain from that. Were they protecting the hotel? Or was it someone involved in Elisa's death trying to get away with it?
It's like every answer just leads to more questions. And then there's the whole thing with the internet. The Elisa Lam story went viral. People all over the world were looking at every little detail, every frame of that footage, trying to figure it out. It's like the whole world became obsessed with solving this case.
The internet has definitely changed how we deal with true crime. It's great for sharing info and investigating, but it also has its downsides. In Elisa's case, all the online talk often mixed up the facts with people's theories, and sometimes that actually hurt the investigation instead of helping.
Yeah, and there's the whole ethical side of it, right? When does being an internet sleuth cross the line and become harassment or violating someone's privacy? Elisa's family deserved to grieve in peace, but instead, this whole thing turned into a global internet sensation.
Exactly. We can't forget that behind every true crime case, there are real people, families going through something awful. It's easy to get caught up in the mystery, but we got to remember the human cost.
So we have these weird things in the forensic reports, the strange stuff with the footage, and then there's the whole dark history of the Cecil Hotel. It's almost like it was meant to be unexplainable. What do we even do now? How do we figure this out?
Well, that's the challenge, right? We have to go through the evidence, the theories, everything, and try to find some truth. Maybe we'll never have all the answers, but the act of looking for them, of exploring the possibilities, that's what makes this case so fascinating.
Okay, so we talked about the physical stuff,
Right.
the roof, the tank, the footage. But let's go back to Elisa herself for a second. We know about her bipolar disorder, but we can't let that define her. Who was Elisa as a person?
Absolutely. Elisa was a daughter, a sister, a friend, a young woman with dreams. She was a talented writer, loved music, loved to travel.
Yeah.
And she was very open about her mental health struggles.
Yeah.
She used her blog and social media to connect with people and offer support. We have to see her as a complete person, not just her diagnosis.
And that's what makes this so incredibly sad. A young life cut short, a family with no answers, and a mystery that everyone's still talking about.
We may never know exactly what happened to Elisa Lam, But her story reminds us how important mental health awareness is, how complicated human behavior can be, and how we need to be ethical when we talk about true crime online.
All right, so we've dug into the evidence, the theories, the ethical stuff. But one thing keeps bugging me. How did she get into that water tank? It doesn't make sense, even if she was really distressed, that she could get in there alone. Are we missing something important here?
You've hit on the biggest mystery of the whole case. Getting into that water tank just doesn't seem possible. The lids were heavy, hard to move, designed to be secure. So how did Elisa get in? Was it already open? Did someone help her? Or is there something else going on, something we haven't even thought of?
If the lid was open, wouldn't someone have seen it? Wouldn't there be some record of them working on the tanks around that time? And if someone helped her, who would do that and why?
Those are the questions investigators have been asking for years. And not having a clear answer makes the mystery even deeper. Some people even suggest she might have been forced to get into the tank by something, playing on the whole haunted Cecil thing.
Okay, but let's be realistic for a minute. If we forget about the paranormal stuff, there aren't many options left. Either someone helped her or she got in there on her own, which just doesn't seem likely.
You're right. And that's why this case still fascinates us and frustrates us too. It's a puzzle that seems impossible, a situation that makes no sense.
So what's the takeaway here? Do we just accept that it was a freak accident? Or should we consider that something darker happened, something intentional?
That's the question that stays with you, even after you've looked at all the evidence and theories. The Elisa Lam case shows us how powerful mystery can be, how much we don't know, and the uncomfortable truth that sometimes, even with all the evidence in the world, we may never really know what happened.
It makes you think, doesn't it? We want to be certain. We want clear answers. But sometimes life throws you a curveball, a mystery with no solution. It forces us to face the unknown.
And maybe that's the best thing we can learn from this. Being okay with not knowing everything, accepting that there are limits to what we can understand, and realizing that some questions might never have answers.
Going through all of this, one thing that just keeps hitting me is how many theories there are about Elisa's death. We have everything from mental health, to conspiracies about the hotel and even the supernatural. It's almost too much.
It really shows you the power of a mystery, doesn't it? When we don't know something, our brains try to fill in the blanks, create stories to make sense of it. And with Elisa's case, with so many questions, those stories can go pretty crazy.
Exactly. And then you add in the whole Cecil Hotel factor. It already had this reputation, the haunted hotel attracting all this darkness. So when something like this happens, it's like people are almost ready to believe anything, even the craziest stuff.
Yeah, the Cecil's past definitely influences how we see this case. It's like a horror movie come to life.
Yeah.
Real and fake, it all gets mixed up.
But even if we forget about the ghosts and all that, we're still left with this puzzle we can't seem to solve. How did she get into that water tank? Was it an accident because of her mental health? Was someone involved? Or is there something else entirely we haven't even thought of?
Those are the questions that keep bringing us back to this case, keep us searching. And I think that's part of why Elisa's story still resonates with people. It reminds us that even with all our technology and knowledge, there are mysteries we just can't explain.
It's kind of humbling, isn't it? We think we can understand everything, solve any problem if we just have enough info. But the Elisa Lam case, it shows us that's not true. It makes us realize we don't know everything and that some things might always be a mystery.
And maybe that's okay. Maybe there's something beautiful about what we don't know, the mysteries that make us think and search.
I think you've got a point there. The Elisa Lam case, it's not just about finding answers. It's about the whole journey, trying to figure out something that might not have a solution.
It's about recognizing how complex people are, the struggles with mental health, and the ethical side of things when a personal tragedy becomes this huge public thing.
This deep dive has been incredible. You've given me, and I'm sure everyone listening, a lot to think about.
It's been great talking about this. The Elisa Lam case is one that stays with you. It makes you question what you believe, be okay with not knowing everything, and remember that even in the face of something terrible, there's always more to learn.
And maybe that's the best way to honor Elisa's memory, to keep asking questions, keep searching for answers, and keep talking about it.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you for taking this deep dive with us. And to everyone listening, we encourage you to keep looking into this case. Come to your own conclusions and never stop looking for the truth, even when it seems impossible to find.